Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpavam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedyat Ravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Well, welcome to our first class studying Vidyaranya's Jivan Mukti Viveka. You have a copy of the text?
I borrowed yours, yes.
Okay. So a little bit about this fellow and this text. So Vidyaranya is a 14th century saint. And during his earlier life, he served as a counselor to the king of a kingdom in central South India, deeply involved in politics, worldly fellow. And then in his seniority, he retires and takes sannyas, and eventually becomes the Shankaracharya of the Sringeri Mutt. He was a Paka Sanskritist, really adept in the poetry of Sanskrit. So he wrote in all the major genres of Sanskrit literature, well known for it. In terms of the Vedanta, the two works that he is best known for are one, Panchadashi, which means 15 chapters, which we are studying on Monday nights. And this is the second text, Jivan Mukti Viveka. So what is a Jivan Mukta? So in the tradition, we have these two terms. Videho moksha, which means liberation beyond the body, and Jivan Mukta. How would I literally translate it? The liberated personality. Frequently translated as liberated while living in this very body. So in our lineage, coming from Shankara, we absolutely assert and affirm that it is possible to experience liberation in this very life, in this very body. We don't have to wait until after we die. Any thoughts about this before we go on? So in this first chapter, Vidyaranya is going to discuss renunciation, which is foundational to this work. Frequently, I will say that self-realization is not difficult. Krishna himself says, easy to perform. Yet it's very rare. Why is it rare? Rare because nobody wants it. What do we mean by that? In order to see clearly the nature of the self, and more importantly, to retire into the self, we have to give up our attachment to illusions and delusions. I like to use the example of the snake and the rope, classic Vedantic image. So if there's a piece of rope on the ground and it's dark, and in my delusion I think it's a snake, what if I just like snakes? And, I want to smooch that snake. I'm frustrated and angry because somehow the snake is not very responsive, because it's not there. It's not very fulfilling, it's an illusion. But I'm never going to see the rope as long as I keep smooching that snake. And that's our problem. There is the story that Swami Tejo Mayananda used to say about the Swami who went to the householder's home for Bhiksha. In the old-timey days, Bhiksha meant that you went around with a begging bowl. Bhiksha, Bhiksha, you could do it once a day to get food. In the Chinmaya mission, it turns out to be the family invites the Swami over, feeds him very well, and at the end of the meal, there's usually a thali with some fruit on it, and there's an envelope with a check in it. Give that to the Swami, and takes the envelope, puts it in his pocket, then takes the fruit and gives it back. Prasad. Have you had that experience around the Chinmaya mission?
Yes.
Yeah. Very common, very common. So the householder says, oh, Swamiji, you've done a great thing. You have renounced this world. And the Swami does a very unusual thing at this point. He gets down on his knees and he touches the feet of the householder. And the guy's all freaked out. He says, no, 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 Swamiji, and brings him up. And the Swami says, oh no, you are the greater renunciant. I have renounced the world, but you have renounced infinite bliss. So this is our problem. This is our problem. Another great parallel I like to use, drawing from the 12-step tradition. Frequently, someone will talk about wanting to get clean and sober. And then their mind is telling them, well, if you had my problems, you'd drink too. I just need some relief. This is the only friend I have. My higher power is vodka. And the old timer says, what you do not see is your attachment to the vodka is what's creating your misery. No, 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 no. I have no money and they're firing me in my job and my spouse is leaving me and my health is gone. Those are real problems. And the person does not see the cause and effect relationship. So too, it's the way the Lord has got the universe set up. Because of Maya, we do not see that it is our attachments, sangraha, that cause my suffering. So, the first thing that Vidyaranya is going to address is sannyas, renunciation. Now, today in the Chinmaya mission, what you do if you want to become a brahmachari and maybe a swami at some point, you go traipsing off to Mumbai or Siddhabari and you take the course, the 2.5-year training course. Get there, some tradition. For the men, the boys, most of them, they shave their heads, except for a tuft in the back called a choti. This is your last attachments to the teacher and to the scripture. Everybody gets white. You wear a white sari if you're a woman. If you're a man, you wear a white dhoti and a kurta. Then, when you finish the 2.5-year training course, you have a choice to make. Do you want to serve the mission or go back to the world? You can do it, it's your choice. But if you want to serve the mission, then you're initiated and you get a new name and you're given the yellow cloth. And then after many years, if they find out that you're not a scoundrel and not sick in the head, and you do good service, then you are given sannyas, meaning the orange robes, and again a new name. That's the tradition today in the Chinmaya mission. Back in the 14th century, same ideas, but slightly different rituals. So at the beginning, when did you take sannyas? So we have the 4 ashramas in an observant Hindu family. You have your brahmachari, your student days. Then you have your grahasta, your householder. You get married. You make a lot of money. You raise your children. Vanaprastha, semi-retirement. You do grandparent duty. Give the business, the farm, the house, the compound to your children. They take care of you, and you take care of the grandkids while the parents are working. And then at the end of your life, sannyas. As an old person, finally you leave the world. Now, in the tradition, you can take sannyas at any point, as long as you don't have responsibilities that you're avoiding. So even today, in the mission, I'll ask a young person, so if you take sannyas, who's going to take care of your parents? If you're an only child, you're not allowed. If you have student loans, you can't take sannyas. Pay them all off. No obligations to the world. Same in those days. So a person at any point in their life, if they're free from obligation, they can take sannyas. One of the things that's wonderful about Vidyaranya, he will address it in this first chapter. Women can take sannyas. How do you like that in the 14th century? Before they're married, or if they're widowed. They're married, they have a husband, they have children. Nope. Why? Because they have obligations in the world. So in those days, you would take sannyas at the beginning of your practice. And you would be given a staff. You'd wear the orange, a loincloth, and it was called a danda, a staff. You would be then a dandi swami, a renunciate. And this is the time in your life when you would be studying scripture, meditating, praying, surrendering to a guru. The tradition was 12 years. And then if you were rooted in knowledge, off goes the staff. And the titles that Vidyaranya is going to use are different than what we have in the Chinmaya mission. They will be Hansa and Paramahansa. Hansa is a swan. And the mythology is this is the great swan that takes us on the flight to the infinite. And it has two wings, Viveka and Vairagya. It's also a pun in Sanskrit. Hansa means swan, but aham saha means I am that. Sometimes you'll hear the mantra soham. Who's heard of that mantra? Yes, it means the same thing. Paramahansa is a title given to someone who has realized the self. So probably the most well-known person with this appellation was Yogananda. He was called Paramahansa Yogananda. That wasn't his first name. That was an acknowledgement of the depth of his realization. So I just wanted to get these terms talked about in the beginning, because he's going to use them in this first chapter. Any questions about this? Now in the end, cut to the end of the chapter. Householders as well as swamis do not reach the Paramahansa state until you renounce the mind, which in the end is the only thing to renounce. All right, let's dive into our text. Now, just a review, we have some numbering issues. The English is not numbered, but the Sanskrit is. Can you read the numbers in the Devanagari?
Kind of, sort of.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
So if it's problematic, then we'll simply identify them by page number for those who are going to be looking at the recording on YouTube. All right, first verse.
Om Parabrahmane Namaha Jivan Mukti Viveka Prathamam Jivan Mukti Pramana Prakaranam. First chapter on the evidence of Jivan Mukti. Yasya nishwasitam veda yo vedebhyo khilam jagat nirmametamaham bande vidyatirtha maheswaram. I pray to Vidyatirth, the Lord Supreme, who created the whole universe out of the Vedas, which are his very breath.
Now, I forget what Tirtha is.
The only meaning of it that I know is it's a place you go for pilgrimage.
Yes, yes, okay. I suspect this is the name of his guru. So, as with most of our texts, it starts with what we call a mangalam, a salutation or a blessing verse. So here he offers salutations to his guru. I suspect his name was Vidyatirtha. And it also has a mystic meaning. He knew who his guru was. Wasn't the man with the orange robes. So Swamiji used to say, find out who the guru is. It's not the body. And this locale of knowledge means the self-evidence of the self. And also origin of the whole phenomenal universe and the origin of the Shruti, the scriptures, the origin of knowledge itself. So he offers a salutation to the truth principle in the form of his guru. Kind of an echo, if you remember those of us who studied Viveka Chudamani. What's the first verse in Viveka Chudamani? My salutations to Sri Govindapada, his guru, who is the absolute essence of the Vedanta. It's the same idea. Next verse.
Vakshe vivirtishanyasam vindvanyasam cha bhedataha hetu videha muktescha Jivan Muktescha tau pramat. I am going to expound the renunciation of the seeker and the renunciation of the knower, distinguishing the one from the other, which are the cause of liberation after death, i.e., deliverance through release from the body, and liberation in life, i.e., emancipation while still alive, respectively.
So, what is the distinction between the liberation of the seeker, the renunciation of the seeker, and the renunciation of the Jivan Mukta, the liberated one? If you enter into this work seriously, understand, in a sense, even if you're a householder and you've entered into deep study of this, you are entering into the renunciation of the seeker. Whether you wear white, yellow, or orange cloth, or if you're a man, whether you have your head shaved or not, or whether you carry a staff, those are externals. And what he says is, if you enter into the path of renunciation, but do not yet achieve full knowledge of the Supreme, capacity to retire into the Supreme, no worries. As Krishna says in Gita, my devotee is never destroyed. options. You may come back in the family of parents which are themselves yogis, and you are quickly united with your knowledge and attain realization very quickly. Or what he's saying here is you may not need to come back. As you go to one of the swargas, the heavens, all your rest of your ignorance drops away, and you attain liberation beyond. Other kind of renunciation is the renunciation of the Jivan Mukti, person who's liberated while still in this body. It's another way of talking about what is self-realization. That's the topic he's going to spend his time talking about in his text. Next verse.
Sannyasa hetur vairagyam yadahar virajet tada pravajediti vedoktas tat tadevhatastu puranakaha. The cause of renunciation is the feeling of disgust towards worldly things, as is prescribed in the Veda. The day one has aversion for the world, he should renounce.
So, is there more?
A little bit. It's from the Jabala Upanishad, and the variety of this renunciation is found in the Puranas.
So the point that he's getting at is, what is the primary cause for the desire to renounce? And he says disgust for the world. Poor translation, poor choice of words. What we really need to do is see the world for what it is. So, for example, in Viveka Chudamani, in the qualifications of a fit student, we have Shama, and he says that peaceful state of mind when it rests in steady contemplation of the goal after having again and again, muhur muhu, detached itself from the chaos of the sense objects through a steady observation of their defects. So, the most transient form of renunciation is, I lost my business and I'm going bankrupt. I'm giving up the world. I've been dating this person for 6 weeks and they dumped me. I'm giving up love. Oh, I have a child who died of cancer. I can't bear it. I'm going to leave this world. So there's a kind of renunciation that can happen when we face tragedy or calamity. It usually doesn't last. It usually doesn't last. A more mature renunciation happens. Shankara says, through a steady observation of the defects, not of the world itself, but of my attachment to it. And this brings us back to what I feel is the most important meditation we can take on. I give it to people in the beginning and in the middle and in the end. What does it feel like to want something you don't have? Craving, spriha, longing, vacha, want. Or the flip side, dvesha, aversion. I can't stand what's going on right now. I want it to stop. I want to get away from it. There's a third form, bhaya, fear. I have what I want, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. Yoga says, can you find any other suffering? What if I break my leg? Okay, let's put physical suffering on the shelf for now. But that's not what afflicts most of us. People don't jump off the bridge because of a broken leg. People don't shoot themselves because of a broken leg. It's the world, attachment and aversion. What do most of us do with that feeling? It's simple. I get what I want and I get rid of what I don't like. And yoga says, how is that working out for you? First thing we need to understand and see, everything in this world is impermanent. It's a big meditation for the Buddhists, meditating on impermanence. Everything, all the physical objects, and thank God, all mind states are impermanent. More I want something, when it falls through my fingers, which everything will do eventually, the greater my suffering. Then yoga says, pay attention to what happens when we satisfy a desire. First, priya, I determine something's dear to me. It's different for people. What I like is different than what you like. Then moda, I get proximate to my object of desire. And finally, pramoda, the point of pleasure. When desire and object of desire become one. And in my ignorance, I attribute the ananda, the bliss, to the person, place, thing, or situation. What yoga says is actually what's happened is I've induced for a moment the mind state free from longing. I'm getting a kiss of the bliss of myself. This is called the Anandamaya Kosha. And we experience it whenever we satisfy a desire and in deep sleep. Who here enjoys a deep sleep? What object has caused the bliss of deep sleep? No object, no people, no ice cream. But what is the nature of deep sleep? It is the absence of ego and the absence of the craving mind, the agitated mind. And we especially know it in that early hour of the day when you first wake up. Oh, I don't want to get up. This is just so, it's just enough mind there to consciously enjoy. And what happens? Oh, I've got this project at work. And, oh, I had this fight with my spouse. And oh, I said I do X, Y, Z and such and such. And no, I didn't do laundry yesterday. Sound familiar? And where does the bliss go? It fades, just like the morning fog when the sun rises. So the agitated, craving, averring mind is necessary to be miserable. It is not necessary. So what we do is watch the mind. When you're upset, rather than thinking the world needs to be fixed or I need to be fixed, see whether or not it's true that I am stuck wanting and own your ananda. When you satisfy a desire, see if you can pay attention that it always does the same thing to my mind. Pleasure, happiness is the same experience. It varies in intensity and duration, but I'm happy. And we are confused and deluded by the diversity of sensory experience. I think it's the ice cream. I think it's the job. I think it's the attention of my spouse. But what it does to my mind is the same. It stops that low level agitation and discontent that I run around with all the time. So this is what is meant by developing this translation. I'm not fond of it, where he says disgust for the world. What it means is seeing the limitation of life as a bogey. Bhoga means enjoyment. Based on the life view. Getting what I want is going to make me happy. Or better, different. Be happy, win. And it takes maturity and insight to see that that whole paradigm is an illusion. I love the European story of the emperor's new clothes. It's a metaphor for all of this. The charlatan tailors have the cloth that doesn't really exist. What is that cloth? This will make you happy. Bigger, better, more different. None of us are willing to admit it doesn't work very well. It's only the child who says, the emperor's naked. Meaning the yogi is still enough, honest enough to see that bhoga is a losing proposition. Then develops the desire to be free from desire. then she has to face the reality of, but I can't switch it off like a light switch. The Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Romans, I do not do that which I would do. And I do, let's see, I do not do that which I would do, and I do that which I hate. That dissonance. So he says, therefore it is not I that do it, but sin that is lodged in my limbs. That's his word for what we would call vasana. Even though I know it's going to get me in trouble, I do it anyway. Any of you ever gotten irritated, angry, or upset with your partner, and you know you should keep your mouth shut, and you don't? Who's had that experience?
Just this morning.
Yeah. You can't flip it off like a light switch. So Shankara says it's the desire to give up attachment. That's fire out there. We work at it. We work at it. So this is the first authentic step, the prerequisite for getting real value from yoga. You have to some degree have seen the futility of the materialist, capitalist, money-grubbing view of the world. Any thoughts on this before we move on? Next verse.
Virakti viraktirtvidha prokta tivratireti cha satyameva tu tivrayam nyasyeda yogi kutichi chake shokto bahu take tivra tarayam hansa sangite mumukshu parame hanse sakshad vijnana sadhane. Indifference to worldly objects is said to be of two kinds, strong and stronger. In the case of strong dislike, the renouncer stays in the stage of a kutichaka, i.e., of a yogi who stays in a hut, etc., away from the locality permanently, and when able, he enters into the bahudaka state, i.e., one who moves on to places without any permanent abode. With stronger aversion, desiring liberation, he attains to the state of a hamsa, which, when matured, leads him to the state of a parahamsa, the direct means to the ultimate knowledge.
So here, Vidyaranya, in the language of his culture at that time, briefly goes through the kind of process most of us do. So the first level of renunciation, here the person leaves family, goes and lives in a hut, where we to some degree withdraw from the world. How do we frame that in our modern times? I would frame it this way. When the idea that a change in circumstances is what's wrong with my life, what I need to do to make it better. This is what Gita will call the abandonment of ego-prompted desire. So is it going to be better with a different job? Is it going to be better with a different spouse? Is it going to be better with a different home? Is it going to be better with more clothes? Is it going to be better with anything? Doesn't mean we don't do our duty in the world. Doesn't mean we don't work for excellence, because that's our duty. But we have finally given up the idea that the circumstances of the world have the inherent capacity to solve my spiritual problem. Then at some time, we begin to see, okay, what I really want to do is find real peace. We go on our search. We may try this spiritual path. We may try that spiritual path. Some of it's helpful. Some of it is just, okay, we see that doesn't work very well. And finally, when our mumukshutva becomes strong, we've all heard this slogan: when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Then we can enter into the Hansa state. We talked about this in my introductory remarks. The first level of renunciation. Again, in India in the 14th century, and actually today among Brahmins, this is when young people take their first step into monastic life. Study scripture, do puja, chant, meditate. And then it finally matures into the Paramahansa state, when all our strivings have ceased. Then the final renunciation, as Shankara will say, asangoham, 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 punah punaha, sachidananda rupaham, aham mevaham avyayah. Unattached, unattached, unattached to mind. Again. I'm of the nature of existence, consciousness, and bliss. I am that I am. Beautiful. So this kind of renunciation is comparable to the person who may be under the delusion, I'm a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig. And finally, their hypnotism is removed. Oh, I have a human body. So they have renounced goat, cow, horse, and pig by seeing what is. It's not some act giving stuff. So he talks about this process. Again, he frames it culturally in India, in his time frame. but the same principles are true for you. Next verse.
पुत्रदारधनादीनां नाशे तात्कालिकीमति धिक् संसारमिति दृक् स्यात् विरक्ते तिर्मन्दता हि सा. Such thought as the worldly life is not worth it occurs temporarily in the loss of a son or wife or wealth, which is considered to be weak detachment.
So here he is again, identifying what I talked about earlier, that temporary or weak detachment, which happens as a response to some disappointment, some loss. It's not rooted in insight. It's simply a response to pain. Again, going back to the 12-step program, one of the things we talk about is relapse. A relapse is when someone has a period of sobriety and then has the brilliant idea, well, I've got this licked. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 6 months. One line of cocaine won't hurt. One glass of wine won't hurt. What happens? Weak renunciation. The pain is gone. Let me try it again. In we go. Let me get kicked around again. This is what we do. You may have some disappointment, might have read some scripture. All right, I'm going to take up renunciation. I'm done with relationships till I get horny. All right, next verse.
Asmin janam nimam bhuvan putradaradhayo mama iti ya suskhira buddhi sa vairagasya tivrata. The determination not to have a child, wife, etc. in this life is said to be strong detachment.
So, if a person has come to see, if I take on these responsibilities, then I have the duty to care for them. Each child, minimum of 18 years. Does anybody know how much it costs to raise a child now? $1.5 million, something like that? Yeah. There goes your renunciation. I had a student come by this weekend from Santa Barbara with a 1.5-year-old baby. How much sleep do you think you get in that first 6 months to a year? Your life is just filled with stress, sleep deprivation. Where is sadhana? Ain't gonna happen. Or you start a business. All these beginnings that we undertake, there's nothing wrong with them. This is not a moral judgment. It has to do with where am I going to put my passion? And if the passion is something in this world, you will get what's in this world, maybe. But here Vidyaranya is saying, this is a text, and mature sannyas is for people who are serious about moksha, liberation. So if I have made the decision, okay, if I'm a Westerner and I don't have the privilege of being able to go into an ashram, that doesn't mean I can't begin to live a life freed from the notion that what's wrong with my life is the externals. I practice santosha, contentment with what is. Now, there's no virtue in poverty, but there's great virtue in simplicity. Does you no good to quit your job and spend all your time drinking tea with your friends and watching Netflix? It's unsadly. Any thoughts on this principle? Next verse.
Punaravrittis sahito loko me mastu kaschana iti tibra tarantvam syan mande nyaso na kopihi. Such thought as, for me, the world with its cycle of rebirth, etc., shall not be, is considered the stronger detachment. There cannot be any renunciation in weak detachment.
Yes. So when I finally come to the understanding this world of birth and death, if you believe in the doctrine of reincarnation, it means lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. What you've had so far in this life, this is it. The world doesn't get any better. You get your 5 cents worth of joy for your 95 cents worth of work. Doesn't get any different. When you finally come to the place, so you could just look at seeing each period of your life as an incarnation, with air quotes. But you come to the point where no more bucket list. This is mature vairagya. This is stronger detachment. And that can take lifetimes. And usually is the fruit many disappointments. Some of us, we just have to wring out of the world every little ounce of joy that it's possible to give. See the suffering of disappointment, of attachment, but not going my way. Next verse.
Yatradya shakti tivre nyasadvayam bhavet Kutichako bahudasche yubhaveto tridandino. In strong detachment, two kinds of renunciation, namely the Kutichak and the Bahudaka varieties, are possible with, respectively, the absence or presence of the ability to move from place to place. Both of them are tridandins, carrying three thin staffs knotted together.
Yes. So here again, in the context of the culture of his period and place, you then are identified as a Dandi Swami. You take on the orange cloth, you learn the secret mantras, and you have the danda, the staff. And if you look online and you just Google Dandi Swami, you'll see them. Sometimes when you're not doing ritual, the danda is covered with a cloth, so you'll see what looks like a cloth covered thing. Or better yet, if you look at images of Adi Shankara, he's always shown with the danda. So it's the mark at that period of time of a person who's taken on these earliest stages of renunciation. It was more formal at the time of Vidyaranya, but the principles are the same. If you become a Dandi Swami in your heart, you can wear orange underwear if you want, but you take sannyas, meaning I've given up my attachment to worldly things. I may have a place to stay, or I can go even deeper and become Aniket Chaitanya, having the consciousness of homelessness. What does that mean? That means I am comfortable anywhere. I could be at Google doing my job and I'm at home. I can be in a crummy little apartment in Oakland and I'm at home. I can be at a mansion in Burlingame and I'm at home. My home is the vast universe, clothed with the sky, no matter what cloth. So this is the mature Hansa, the one who has moves through the world as a mumukshu, as a seeker after liberation, knowing that my prarabdha, my karma, will place me where this body is supposed to be. You do not need to go to India and enter into an ashram. And in fact, you can go to India and enter into an ashram. And if you're very proud of the fact that you're a Dandi Swami with 14 nuts, not just 10 nuts, then you're probably attached to status and position. You're a fool. Always. Vairagya, detachment, sannyas, is an interior experience. It's always about letting go of attachment. Any thoughts on this? All right, one more.
स्वयं तीव्रतरे ब्रह्मा लोकमोक्ष विभेदतः तल्लोके तत्त्वविद्धंसो लोकेऽस्मिन् परहंसकः. The other two varieties of sannyas, namely Hamsa and Paramhansa, are possible in stronger aversion to worldly life and its goods. The difference between them is that the former leads to Brahmalok and the latter to moksha, i.e., to complete liberation. The Hamsa sannyasin realizes the absolute truth in Brahmalok, whereas the Paramhansa sannyasin attains the same here and now.
So the Hansa, the first stage of this stronger detachment, knows that Brahman is, and I aspire to realize it. And they will attain liberation after the dropping of this body. Or as Gita will say, they may be born again in a family where they're quickly united with their yoga. I always think of Ramana Maharshi. You think, oh my gosh, he attained self-realization at 16. His whole sadhana was half an hour. We don't know what an idiot he might have been in his prior life. He got really close but didn't make it. Pops back in and then, it's an incredible man. Paramahansa. Oh, that's the one who not only has given up this world, but also sees who he is, Aham Brahmasmi, and sees what the world is. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. How can I be attached to something that's illusory? Oh, I'm so attached. I have no greater joy than when my shadow gets to be 80 feet. It only happens in the winter on a sunny day in the afternoon when the sun is low. Then I walk outside and I have an 80-foot shadow. Oh, it is so marvelous. It's nonsense. But that's you. Oh, I'm so happy. I got this job. I got this partner. I have this house. And so is nice to me. Rejoicing over colored glass, thinking they are precious gems. All right, we'll quit here. Can you see what the number is?
We did number 10, so we're on 11.
We're on number 11. And for those of us who can't read the Devanagari numbers, what page are we on?
We're at the last verse on page 3.
Last verse on page 3 for next week. All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha.